When was it that you decided, Molly, that consulting felt like a good space for you?
So I had this moment last year, actually, I think similar to you, Kate, and similar to so many people who are already part of this community. I was laid off last year. It hurts at the beginning, and you're sort of like scrambling, trying to put things back together, figuring out what's next. And I was really fortunate that through my network, I got a few like contracting and consulting gigs. And I think, like a lot of people, I was like, great, these are going to be the things that are going to tide me over until I find what's next. But the more that I got into consulting and the more like the deeper I got into contract work, I literally had an aha moment. I had like a light bulb go off and I was like, I actually feel more like I come to work better. I show up better. I feel more sort of ignited by like my ability to work on a diverse set of problems with different people to face different challenges rather than coming back like again and again and again to work on the same problem.
Mm,
Like during a conversation with a friend of mine, I was like, what if the consulting is the thing, right? Like, what if I stop putting my energy into something that doesn't feel good, which is going back in house, applying to full-time jobs, sort of like narrowing down again what I'm able to do? What if I stayed in this lane? Okay, what are the things that I need to be able, like, what do I have to set up to do this in an organized way? And that's how I sort of started stumbling into, my own like fractional solopreneur journey. And it's just sort of taken shape along the way. But it started through that sort of like feeling reignited for the first time in a really long time. And finally having sort of the freedom to bring all of my skill sets
mhm.
to what I do and not just like the super narrow, like do this, solve this one problem again and again and again.
I love that. I think for me, I started consulting back the first time I consulted was 2019 actually. Method had been bought by SC Johnson and I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do next? I was like, well, maybe I'll do a little bit of consulting and see if I can get a job that way. And I just really didn't know what that looked like. I had no idea what it looked like to get a job. And I just kind of put it out there into the universe that I was looking. And immediately I had a woman that was my boss over at Method. We were talking, Paige. She had left the company earlier than me. And she was like, well, let me introduce you to this woman, Layla, who's a friend of mine, and she might have some work for you. She's been working as a consultant and an executive coach for years. I was like, that'd be great. She's like, you need to know her anyway. I met Layla and I was like, oh my God, she's everything I want to be when I grow up, basically. And she was taking a new gig over at Allbirds as the chief people officer. And she was like, well, you know what? I think I'm going to need a head of talent acquisition. Why don't you come do some fractional work for me? And then she introduced me to the CEO of an ambulance company who also needed some work. And he hired me and she hired me. And then my friend Christina was like, hey, Kate, are you looking for some work right now? Because I might have like some work in my company that I'm working with in recruiting. And I was like, great, I could do that too. Perfect. And she introduced me to Robin over at who's the head of talent acquisition over at Plenty. And she was like, I have the worst possible jobs to recruit for. Would you be interested? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, how bad are they really? And she's like, no, really, literally, they're the hardest jobs in the world to hire for. And I was like, all right, I could do 8 hours a week on that. No problem. I got 8 hours a week. She's like, great, here's the 5 jobs I need. And these jobs were farm robotics technician, electrical engineer, farm robotics. Like they were the most obscure, bizarre jobs. And I filled all 5 of them in 8 hours a week in like less than 4 months. It was the biggest, I would still say that's probably like the biggest accomplishment of my entire life. I talked someone out of Google to go work there. I mean, like it was such a challenge I worked so hard on and it was so much fun. And I was like, I get to do recruiting for a farm robotics company, set up an entire talent acquisition org and onboarding program for a ambulance company, and I get to be the part-time global head of talent acquisition for Allbirds that's going to an IPO. Like what a rad opportunity, right? And Allbirds made me a full-time, offer and I went to IPO with them eventually, but and then I got kicked out on my ass this last gig, I'm coming up on a 1 year now. It's actually about to be my 1 year anniversary in full-time consulting. And I was like, oh, I did this before. And then when I came back out into consulting this time, I offered a bunch of free coaching and it turned into a insane company that, I did not think was going to turn out this way, but every conversation I had in consulting told me that I was in the right place. Every time I got to take on a new gig, and even every day when I'm like, oh my God, this is so hard, I still feel like I wish I would have run my own business a lot sooner. Except for days when I work like 16 hours and I eat a spoonful of peanut butter and get about 4 hours of sleep. Those days I'm like, man, it was really nice being a chief people officer that got to be off at like 6 o'clock. What does that feel like? So there's that. Anyway, what about you, Corinna? You're still on the fence, right?
Well, I think I'm still figuring it out, which I think is okay, but I similar, like was laid off, and then I did some sort of consulting work for friends and family, and I loved it because I really my sort of analysis of their business, one was a queer bookstore, that's like successful here in Portland, and the other is a dog boarding facility that I was just updated yesterday that she had her best month ever and pulled in like $22,000 in 1 month. So that's just by helping her do a cost analysis. She's giving all of her employees 401k for the first time ever. Like it's just these real stories that help people, and that's always what I want to do. It's just I want to help like women-owned businesses be as successful as possible. So that's kind of like my draw. And then finding you both and finding this community is part of that journey, right? Like really connecting with doing good work with good people, and being part of the Plus One Collective is kind of we're at the beginning stages, but hopefully that transitions into long-term
Yeah.
sustainable work for everyone in good
I think that's
spaces.
the special, sorry, I think that's the special thing about consulting is once you tap into it, it's always there, right? Like
That's
you
true.
go back. Yeah, you can
Yeah.
pivot. You can pivot a million times. You can go back in house. You can come back like, but when you learn sort of the basics of consulting, it's like riding a bike. I know that's so cliche, but like it is kind of like riding a bike. You can always come back to it. It's always there. It's always yours. You can keep it activated as much or as
Yes.
little as you want, depending on what's happening. And so I think there's like a lot of people like you, Corinna, who do things here and there when it makes sense, like people like, because the people in your network or who have worked with you are the people who can best speak to like the skills and what you can do for them.
I think it's really cool when they have no idea what you do and then you come in and completely can change their life with like your ideas and how to
Yeah.
effectively and efficiently like run their business, right? Like they know you as a friend or whatever, and then they're like, wow, I had no idea this is what you can do.
That's what happened to me when I started doing resumes. Like when I
Yeah.
do resumes for my friends and they were just like, "Hey, Kate, can you help me?" And I was like, "Sure." And I'd write them the stellar resume that took me way too long and I should never have taken that long to write. But like and people would be like, "Oh my God, you're actually good." Like how many times I've heard, "Oh wow, you're actually good at this." Also makes me wonder like what people were thinking about me before. Like it's such a good feeling, right? When somebody's like, I can't believe you did this for me. That's in consulting, you get to be the expert in the room. I think that's part of it too, right? Like you get to be like you are paying me because I am the expert at this. Now, not everybody treats you that way, right? And sometimes you have to really prove yourself and sometimes people just don't know how to work with consultants in general. And also consultants get a bad name sometimes for just like soaking up the money and not really doing much. So when you are a good, and I would say the people that we have, one in the Plus One Collective and the people that we've sort of helped build their careers are good. Like, right. And if you are a good consultant, you are worth your weight in gold. And I think
Mhm.
like that's what we're here for is helping those people like find that space where they're super excited to work and have impact in a lot of different spaces, be that expert in the room, but also be like a next level consultant where people are like, wow, I didn't know you were able to do that, which I think is like a distinction that we make that we are not like, I know we're talking about Launchpad and talking about like how to launch your consulting career, but like we are surrounded by successful consultants that have done this right. And we talk about the do good aspect of the, Plus One Collective and sort of what we do over here at KJS and all of that and the free coaching we give away. But the piece of that that's like, sometimes gets lost in that is like these are exceptional consultants. Like these are people that are top of their game, outstanding work ethic, and also do-gooders. So we really believe in that model. Like that's what Launchpad is about, right? It's about building the model that not only works for your business, but like works for the greater good too, because you can be a exceptional consultant and also a do-gooder at the same time.